Kadosh Boker on Masechet Zevachim Daf Yomi Daf Tzadik Vav Amud Aleph 96A1 says the Gemara. Ela, but rather, yeah, we're talking about as follows. Yeah, you with me? He says like this. Ela kederot shel migdash amai yishavru. So he says kederot of the migdash. Yeah, he says, why is it that you're going to come and you're going to break it? He says, why is it that the Torah comes and it says you have to break the kidurot of cheres, that they came and they cooked with the basar chatat? So he says, nadrinu likivshonot, right? Why don't you just put it back into the oven, right? And once you put it back in the oven, it gets rid of all the tam, which is balua. Remember that cheres is bolea, right? And once it's nivla, it doesn't come out. So, Amar Rabbi Zera says, Rabbi Zera, lefi she'en osin kivshono b'Yerushalayim. We don't make these big ovens in Jerusalem because if not, it will blacken the walls. You remember? We said that we didn't want black walls, right, in Jerusalem. So therefore, if you're going to come and you're going to do all these things, all the walls would be black. So therefore, that's why they try to make sure that factories and all those things. So therefore, what they do is that they always have all these factories outside because there's so much of the pollution and all those things everywhere. So you have to make sure that it's going to be outside. So Amar Abaye says, "V'chiyosina shpatot ba'azara." He says, fine, but are you going to make like a garbage dump in the middle of the zara? So fine, you don't want to make these ovens because the ovens are going to blacken the walls of Jerusalem. But what are you going to do? You have to break them all. But what? You're going to start making, what's going on here. So he says, he says it was, Abai didn't hear that which they taught Shemaya in Kal Nevo. Right? He says, he says, he says there was a miracle that they used to break it and it used to get absorbed in the ground. Therefore, they didn't have to do anything. Meaning it's not that they took a shum davar, boom, absorbed and nothing. So he says, Elahadam Rav Nachman Abam Rav Avua, says Rav Nachman name Rav Avua. Yeah, you're listening. Tanur, right? Shel Migdash. The Tanur of Migdash was a Matechet Ava. Right? So says the Gemara, 1 second. Naved de Cheres. This is going to be Why don't you make it of Cheres and make it that it's got the Hesek is on the inside? You remember we made a differentiation between the hesek on the inside or the outside. If it's going to be on the outside, it's a problem because then it's already absorbed. But if it's going to be on the inside, it gets burnt even before anything happens. So the answer is the Gemara, given the ika shte alechem, since you have the shte alechem velechem apanim, tafiyatam batanur, ugdushatam batanur, have a kli sharet. It's like a kli sharet. The kli sharet, the cheres of din. You may never make a kli sharet out of cheres. Meaning that's why you don't make it out of cheres. Meaning it's got the din of a kli sharet because since you're making the bread mamash bifnim, so therefore it's like a kli sharet. And kli sharet you don't make out of cheres, right? It's not kavod to make it out of cheres. Sadik vav amubet 96b. Yeah, you got your seatbelts on. Vafilu Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yudah, and even according to Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yudah, right, that he says that you are allowed to make the kli sharet even if it's not going to be matechet. Lo ka'amar etz. You could no, it means that you don't have to make it from matechet. You can make it from etz, but cheres not. Right? He also is modeh that the cheres is going to be pasul. We'll question exactly why, right? But he says that it's not allowed to be done. So because of that, he comes and he says that it doesn't help, right? The kli cheres to be over here for this tanur because it's a kli sharet. And kli sharet you cannot make it out of cheres, right? Ma? כל דבר סופק, מה זה קשור? כל דבר חוץ מזכוכית. רבי יצחק בר יהודה ורב גיל קמא דרמי בר חמא. So Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yehuda comes and he was ragil in front of Rami bar Chama. Shavke. So he left him Oziel and he went, right, Oziel Rav Sheshat. And he comes and he went to learn by Rav Sheshat. Yom Achad Pagabe. Right, so one day he comes and he finds his Talmid. Right, so he finds his Talmid. So one more time. Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yehuda used to learn in front of Rami bar Chama. Okay, now what happened was is that he left him, right, and he went to learn by Rav Sheshat. So one day he sees him. Elmaleh, he comes and he says, Al kafta naktan reicha ati la liyad. He says, Adoches, right, achzani biyad. And therefore I've got the reach malchut, right, liyadi, which means gasei ruach, they come and they go to very anashim מאוד chashuvim. And therefore they come and they think that because of that, they're also going to become chashuv. Right? What does that mean? Many times we see this. We see that many times people come and they think, you know what, if I'm going to go to him, now I'm going to be chashuv. So he says, Mishum da zatlach lekamed Rav Sheshat, havalach ke Rav Sheshat. He says, what? Do you think that because you went to Rav Sheshat, now you're going to become like Rav Sheshat? So Elmaleh comes and he tells him, La mishum hachi. Right, thank you. He says, La mishum hachi. It's not because of that I went to learn by him. He says, more ki baina milta mineh, pashul misvara. He says, the reason why is because whenever I ask you a question, right, he's going to answer me miasvara. Ki mashkachna matnita, So now when I'm going to come and I'm going to find the Mishnah of Raita, Parchala, right? Chubato is going to be a question against it. Why? Because I've got a matnita or I've got a Braita against a Svara. Rav Sheshat ki bayna milta. When I ask Rav Sheshat a question, Pashlim matnita, he answers me from a matnita or a Braita. Because even if I'm going to find another one, right? Matnita, they're both at the same level. Meaning like this. If I'm just going to come and I'm going just to answer you misvarot, I've got a problem with that. Why? Because remember, svarot, or so they call them sometimes svarot beten. What is svarot beten? They come from your stomach. So you're going to say what's svara. If I'm going to come and I'm going to bring you a proof from another braita, so then that's it. I just destroyed the svara. There's nothing else anymore. So, but if I'm going to come and I'm going to answer you always with a braita, so even if it is that you're going to find another braita, but it's a braita and a braita. So therefore it's much stronger. So that's why I went to learn by Rav Sheshat, not because of that, because he's Yuter Gadol, or because I just went because, right, Rav Sheshat. Right? That's the way the Ashkenazim pronounce it. We always say Rav Sheshat. That's the way that we pronounce it. Right? So therefore, yes, the ones that put it in the Gudot are Ashkenazim. Yeah. So therefore he comes and he says like this. So therefore he says, fine. There's a Gemara like this. So he says, Rav Yitzchak bar Yehuda. So he comes and he says he brought a proof of where they're learning from. Elmaleh. So he comes and he says like this. Ba mina milta divshit lach. Huh? Yeah, you with me? He says like this. Ba mina milta divshit lach kimatnita. He comes and he says like this. Yeah, he comes and he says, he's asking Dvar Halacha, right? That he's going to come and he's going to be poshet a safek. So now he says like this. He says, right? Is it going to be matim for a Mishnah or not? So so he asked them a question. What happens if you only cooked with a little bit of the kli? Do you need to do mirika shtifa or not? So he says, eno ta'un mididahava. So he comes and he says, you don't need it, right? Because it's like haza'ah. So says Rav Yitzchak bar Yudah, v'halo taniyachi. Says, but we didn't learn that mefurash. What are you talking about? So he says, mistabra kebeged. It's like a beged. Right, which means it's mistaber to say that this is going to be that it's like the beged. Ma beged and just remember by the beged we said that if it's only going to be on a small little portion, what do we say? You only have to wash that little tiny portion. So he says, so too mekom adam afkli, so too and tarun mirikash tifal mekom bishul. Amarle come and he says midami. Can you compare both cases? Dam lo mefapea, meaning blood. It gets inside and that's it. It stays there. He says bishul mefapea. When you cook something, it spreads, it goes all around. So he says, ve'od, and furthermore, Tanya, we learned in a Braita, right? Chomer ba'azah mimirika shtifa. There's a chumrah by azah more than mirika shtifa. Chomer mimirika shtifa. Mizah, the chomer ba'azah, right, is what shazah yeshna b'chataot u'chitzon u'chataot minyot. Meaning you do sprinkle, whether it's going to be in the outer chataot and the inner chataot. V'yeshna lifnei zrika, and it does have the concept of the blood before the zrika. Mashenke mimirika shtifa, but not by mimirika shtifa, that it's only going to be basar, which is fitting for eating. And it's not going to be by all the chatiyot pnimiyot because it's completely burnt. V'chomer b'mrika u'shtifa. Shemrika u'shtifa no gabim kol shekadashim kadashim kalim. U'b'shem b'misad kli. Tau mrika u'shtifa kol akli. Mashen kemazah. So here it's written mefurash that you do need to do mrika u'shtifa, the entire utensil, even though you only used a little bit of it. So he says, Amalei, he said, Tanya. If it's taught like that, it's taught like that. Meaning, if there's a braita like that, so then there's nothing what to talk about. So the time of mine. So he says the Gemara, but Bemet, what's the reasoning then? You're right, meaning that here we just prove that even though you could have svarot, once it's taught in a braita, it's taught in a braita. That's it. So he comes and he says, so Amarka, so he's coming and he says, the pasuk says, "V'im bichli nuchoshet bushala." When it says bikli nuchoshet bushala v'afilu b'miktzat hakli, so it's mashma that even if it's going to be part of the kli, right? So he says, and that's why the pasuk says umurak v'shutaf b'mayim, which means you have to come and do the minikash tiva on the entire kli, even though it's only going to be on a little part of it. Okay, so therefore, if it's going to be right, be clean nechoshet, so it's mashma even on part of the kli, you have to come and you have to do it on the entire kli. Next two dots, right? Echad kodshei kadashim kalim. They need to do minikash shtifa. Okay, and Rabbi Shimon says only kodshei kadashim, but not kadashim kalim. Tanu Rabbanan, we learned in a braita chatat. He comes and he says this. En li ela chatat. That's only going to be by the chatat. Kol kadashim inayin. How do we know all the kadashim like that? So Talmud Lomar comes and teach you kodesh kadashim hu. Yachol shani marbeta truma. I would have thought to say that it's going to also apply to truma. What does that mean? That even truma has kedusha. Talmud Lomar otah. What does it mean otah? It's only with this and not anything else. Prat le truma. It's coming to exclude truma. These are the words of Yehuda. Rabbi Shimon comes and he says, Kodesh kadashim need to mirikal shtifa. Kadashim kalim do not need mirikal shtifa. Dichtiv kodesh kadashim. Kodesh kadashim in Kadashim kalim no. So he comes and he says, "My time Rabbi Yehuda." What's the reasoning of Rabbi Yehuda? So he says, "Miditzich ota lemiyut truma." Since I need ota to be mimayet truma, so it's mashma the kadashim kalim or like kodesh kadashim. Meaning, I only had the word ota lemayet what? Lemayet truma. So if it's coming lemayet truma, kadashim kalim are included. So he says, Rabbi Shimon Rabbi Shimon is going to tell you ota kedamrinan. It's like what we just said right now that it should have been mimayet chatat psula. Right? So he comes and he says, so therefore, since I don't need this, when it says Kodesh Kadashim he, it's Davka Kodesh Kadashim, Kadashim Kodesh Kadashim, Manot Kadashim Kalim. So says the Gemara, Truma lo baye shtifa. What? Truma does not need Mirikal shtifa? But Tanya, we learned in a Braita, we know that if you have a pot that you cooked meat, you're not to cook milk. Now, if you do cook it, this is noten tam. Now, by the way, we're going out of Ilchot Kodshim and we're going into Basar v'chalav. Because a lot of basar v'chalav and taravot and some of it we actually learn from here, and some of them we're going to learn from chulin. So he comes and he says like this. He says v'im bishel benoten tam. Now, if you did cook a meat in a milky pot v'chule, so then it's going to be noten tam. Truma lo yivashel b'chulin. When you have a truma, you're not supposed to cook the chulin. V'im bishel, but if you did cook it benoten tam, so then it's going to be noten tam. So Abaye comes and he says, yeah, lo tzricha ela ledamar more. What we're talking about, it's like what more said. Bishel b'mitzat kli tomri kal shtifa kol kli. That if you only cook with a little bit of it, you have to cook the entire thing. Hatruma lo tzricha lemakom bishul. But truma, you only need the place of the bishul. Meaning, by everything else, you need the entire keli. By truma, it's only the makom of the bishul. Right? That's the only thing that was balad tama truma. So Rava comes and he says, "Lo tzricha ledamar more b'mayim velo b'yayin, b'mayim velo b'mazug." What does that mean? Hafilu b'yayin v'hafilu b'mazug. When we come and we're talking about the case of truma, there we're talking about that even if you're going to need the medikal shtifa, is talking about even with wine and even mazug. And we just said that we were talking about the case of the braita, which do the korbanot. It's not with maim or not b'mazug. And the third answer is Rabba bar ulamar. Rabba bar comes and he says, "Lo tzricha ela damar mor medikal shtifa betzonen." Right? You have to come and you have to do it in cold water. But here in the case of truma, you have to do it even bechamin. It's even hagalah b'mayim chamim is already enough. You don't have to do the mayim sorenim, right? Right? That means not only do you have to do hagalah, you do hagalah and then you put it in cold water, right? That's, by the way, that's what we always do, right? The reason why is because because if not, then the hot water, which is still, it would still be absorbed. So that you right away you put it in cold water and then nothing's going to be absorbed. So hani chalaman da'amar medikal shtifa betzonen. That's good. According to the man da'amar medikal shtifa is going to be betzonen. But according to the man da'amar, that's going to say that medikal bechaminu shtifa is betzonen. My kalima, what are you going to say? So he says shtifa yeterata. We're talking about an extra shtifa, meaning after you already did the medikal shtifa, you're going to do an extra shtifa with ma'im tzonenim in order that it doesn't get again absorbed back into the pot.